Part 27. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 261. In a towering palace. A man in white sat at the head, his expression indifferent, his eyelids slightly drooping, as if he was dozing with his eyes closed. On the table in front of him, there was a map, which was the entire territory of the Great Qin dynasty. At this time, the map was already densely marked, almost covering the entire territory of the Great Qin dynasty, including the edges. There were 8 old men waiting around him. At this moment, the eyes of the 8 people all fell on the man in white, waiting for his orders. The territory of the Great Qin dynasty is even more vast than I imagined. The man in white opened his eyes flashing with brilliance, and sighed. My lord, the Great Qin dynasty did not originally have such a large territory, but it annexed the Xuanhuan dynasty and recovered the Kangyu dynasty. Now it is already a hegemon-level existence in the Tianlan domain. The territory is vast, so it is naturally not small. An old man in black robe said respectfully. Humph. After annexing the 2 great dynasties and occupying all the resources of Tianlan domain, it's time to pay the price. There was a cold light flashing in the eyes of the man in white. He stood up, walked to the side of the map, and looked down at the map of the entire Great Qin dynasty. His eyes narrowed slightly, and the cold light surged. My lord, do you have any instructions? An old man in grey asked respectfully. The other 7 old men also looked at the man in white. Pass the order down, let all the Baidu disciples who are training outside rush to Tianlan domain to attack Dakin. The man in white's voice was flat, but full of overwhelming fighting spirit. Yes, hearing this, the old man in grey nodded, and then he left the hall. The man in white was the leader of Baidu sect, Nangong Lingtian. He was slightly younger than the master of Ziwei Fairy Palace, the master of Fenglei Pavilion and others. But if anyone ignores his cultivation because of his age, it would be a big mistake. Nangong Lingtian is a powerful person in the 3rd level of the Saint Realm. His strength is so terrifying that no one can be his opponent except those in power in the Holy Land and some old monsters who have been hidden from the world. Not only that, he is also the leader of the sect alliance in the western region of the Apocalypse domain, holding the right to speak in the entire western region, and his status is extremely high. Such talent and status make him qualified to look down on the heroes. And he has always boasted that he is extraordinary, thinking that no one among his peers can be defeated, and his behavior is domineering everywhere. The friction between Baidu sect and Ziwei Immortal Palace also came from him. But this time, Baidu sect lost a full 7 saints in Dakin, which can be said to be the most serious loss except Ziwei Immortal Palace. How can he bear this? Therefore, in the meeting held by Ziwei Immortal Palace that day, Nangong Lingtian was the first to express his support for conquering Dakin. He wants to destroy this rising dynasty. Otherwise, it will be difficult to eliminate the hatred in his heart. Nangong Lingtian stood with his hands behind his back, gazing into the distance. After a long time, he retracted his gaze and said in a cold voice. Haha, Great Qin dynasty, I will come to take your head soon. He sneered, and a surging fighting spirit burst out from his body, sweeping in all directions, causing the temperature in the hall to drop sharply, making the old men shiver. The Lord is wise, many elders shouted in unison. Nangong Lingtian had no expression on his face, and then he waved his sleeves and said coldly. Go down and prepare. Yes, hearing this, everyone bowed and retreated. Nangong Lingtian stood with his hands behind his back, gazing into the distance, with a strong chill in his eyes, and muttered. Qin Mu, you wait for me, it won't be long before I will flatten this dynasty, and then I will see what you, the emperor, can do. Just then, a knocking sound rang out, and then the door opened, and a young man walked in. This young man was dressed in brocade clothes, with an outstanding temperament and handsome appearance. He was Nangong Yu, the son of Nangong Lingtian. Nangong Yu inherited his father's amazing talent. At the age of 18, he had reached the 7th level of Yuan Shen. Not only that, he was also good at refining pills and setting up formations. Although he was only at the 6th level of Yuan Shen now, the spiritual formation he arranged was difficult to break even for ordinary cultivators in the realm of Zhandao. In addition, the many treasures given by his father Nangong Lingtian made him an invincible existence under Zhandao. This made him the leader of the younger generation of Tiankai domain and a peerless genius. Father. After arriving here, Nangong Yu showed a flattering smile on his face. He came close to Nangong Lingtian, bent down and bowed his head, with an extremely humble attitude. Seeing this, Nangong Lingtian frowned slightly, and after a moment of silence, he asked, what do you want to do for your father? Father, several uncles died in the Great Qin dynasty. I beg you to let me go to Tianlan territory, flatten the Great Qin dynasty, and avenge my uncles. Nangong Yu bowed and said. Nangong Lingtian frowned, and then said, the Great Qin dynasty is not easy to mess with. Although you have the cultivation of the Yuan Shen realm, you are too young after all. If you rush to kill, I am afraid it will be extremely dangerous. He shook his head, unwilling to let his son take risks. Father, don't worry, I have already made a foolproof plan, and I will definitely kill Qin Mu, the dog thief. Nangong Yu said confidently. Nangong Lingtian's brows were still frowned, and he never relaxed. Father, Qin Mu dared to slaughter 7 elders of my clan. I must personally get this revenge for them. Seeing that Nangong Lingtian did not agree, Nangong Yu said anxiously. As the young leader of Baidu sect, he urgently needs such a battle to prove his strength. This is an opportunity. If you miss it, it will be difficult to achieve such a brilliant record in the future. Since you have decided, I will let you go, but remember, you must protect yourself. If you can't do it, retreat first, understand? Nangong Lingtian said lightly. Thank you, Father, for your help. Hearing this, Nangong Yu was overjoyed and bowed to thank him. Nangong Lingtian thought for a while and handed Nangong Yu a jade talisman with mysterious patterns on it, emitting mysterious fluctuations, which seemed to contain some kind of magical power, and said, take this jade talisman, it can be used when you encounter danger. As he spoke, he stretched out his right hand. Suddenly, the jade talisman was suspended in the air, trembling slightly, and the lingering runes released a brilliant light. Nangong Yu quickly reached out to take it, overjoyed. Thank you, Father, for the gift. Yes, Nangong Lingtian nodded, and then instructed, this time you go to Dakan, you must be careful and cautious, don't be careless. Don't worry, Father, Nangong Yu said. Then he put the jade talisman away. Well, go down and prepare, we will soon be able to flatten the Dakan dynasty. Nangong Lingtian waved his hand and said. Yes, Nangong Yu was extremely excited and turned around to leave. However, just as he turned around, a pretty girl suddenly appeared at the door, poked her head out, blinked her beautiful eyes, and said with a bit of cunning. I want to go to Tianlan territory to play too. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 262. The sound is clear and sweet, like the first cry of an oriole, and like a lark singing. The girl was wearing a red dress, her eyes were moist and charming, like 2 bright black gems, which seemed to be able to enchant the soul. Her skin is as delicate as silk, which can be broken by a blow, her lips are bright red, her nose is straight, and her face is shining with a lustrous light, as if it can be broken by a blow. Wearing a flaming crown on his forehead, his whole body is filled with a sense of nobility, which makes people feel awe. Are you eavesdropping again? Seeing the girl's cunning look, Nangong Yu's mouth twitched, and his face fell instantly. The girl stuck out her tongue, made a naughty face, and then jumped out from the side, pouting her little mouth and saying, Whoever eavesdropped, they were obviously listening openly, but you were too stupid to see it. You. Hearing this, the corner of Nangongyu's mouth twitched slightly. Just when he was about to scold him, he suddenly thought that his father was behind him, his eyes changed slightly, and he could only frown and said, "My brother is going to conquer the Qin dynasty, not just for fun. Why are you joining in the fun? The girl is none other than Nangong Lingtian's daughter, Nangongyu. What does your crusade against Great Qin have to do with me? I just want to play in the Tianlan region." After hearing Nangongyu's reprimand, Nangongyu pouted and rolled her eyes, looking aggrieved. "Why are you, a girl, going to a messy place like Dakan? You just stay in the mansion and practice," Nangongyu said in a deep voice. If he had this drag bottle with him, he would definitely be constrained in his actions. "No, I want to go. Anyway, if you don't agree, I will tell my mother that you are bullying me." "Wow, my mother loves you the most. If you dare to bully me, she will definitely not spare you." As she spoke, Nangongyu pretended to cry, her eyes full of tears and pitiful. Seeing this, Nangongyu had no choice but to turn around and turn his eyes to Nangong Lingtian for help. Seeing this scene, Nangong Lingtian's lips curved up in a doting manner, and he whispered softly, Don't be willful." Although he said words of rejection, his tone was so gentle that Nangongyu couldn't help but feel jealous after hearing it. And Nangongyu also ran up to Nangong Lingtian, pulled his sleeves, shook them and said coquettishly, "Father, I also want to go to Dakan." The girl blinked her big black eyes and looked at Nangong Lingtian with hope. Seeing the girl's coquettish look, Nangong Lingtian smiled slightly, and then rubbed her hair lovingly. He did not stop his daughter from being willful. He doted on his daughter to the core, and Nangong Lingtian had no resistance at all to his daughter's coquettishness. However, going to Daqin this time was indeed very dangerous. Although he was fully confident that Daqin could be destroyed, he did not dare to estimate the casualties involved. Immediately, he touched Nangongyu's sleek hair and comforted him, "Okay, don't be willful anymore. Going to Dakan this time is very dangerous. If you don't pay attention, you will lose your life. You should listen to your brother. If so, just stay at home." Nangongyu pouted her mouth and said dissatisfied, "With so many strong men taking action, how could we possibly lose? Besides, I have an ethereal holy body. Who can catch me?" As soon as these words came out, the envy in Nangongyu's eyes suddenly became more intense. The ethereal holy body is a special physique that possesses the power of space and can move distances instantly, which is extremely unnatural. Moreover, it can hide its own breath in another space, so that ordinary existence cannot detect it at all. That's why he just said that the other party was eavesdropping again, because this is not the first time the girl has done this kind of thing. This made Nangongyu extremely envious, and he also hated that he couldn't have such a physique. Because the ethereal holy body not only possesses the power of space, it is also a holy body that can cultivate extremely quickly, which can be called a monster. If he possesses the ethereal holy body, then his current cultivation level must be more than just the Yuanshen realm. But the girl has such a powerful holy body, but she doesn't want to make progress, wastes her cultivation, and uses the power of the holy body to do some unreasonable things all day long. It's really irritating. "You stinky girl, how many times have my father told you not to tell anything about the ethereal holy body?" After hearing this, Nangong Lingtian's face darkened slightly and he said with a straight face, "If you continue to be disobedient like this, I will ban you for a year." If ordinary people possessed the holy body, they would wish to hide it so that no one would know about it. It turns out that my silly girl is doing well, and she publicizes it every day, as if she wants to let the whole world know about it. For this reason, his old father was almost heartbroken. Okay, why don't I stop talking?" Seeing that Nangong Lingzhen was angry, Nangongyu pursed her lips and hurriedly compromised. She looked at Nangong Lingtian with misty eyes and said weakly, obviously a little afraid of her serious father. She didn't want to be banned for a year, or she would be suffocated to death. Humph, you know your mistakes and can correct them, so you are wise. Nangong Lingtian snorted coldly, and then said, let's go and have dinner with your mother first. There is no need to mention the matter of going to Dakin again. After saying that, Nangong Lingtian waved his sleeves and left, heading outside. Nangongyu made an unconvinced face at Nangong Lingtian's back, and then followed him angrily. When Nangongyu saw this, he breathed a sigh of relief. Finally got rid of this drag bottle. Then, he also walked towards the door. Night covers the sky, the moon is hazy, and a bright moon hangs in the sky. In the Baidu sect, in a towering castle, Nangongyu stood in front of a portrait. Beside him, a group of maids knelt down respectfully, their eyebrows lowered and they did not dare to raise their heads. Ha ha, Qin Mu, I think you won't die this time. Looking at the portrait of the woman in red in front of him, Nangongyu raised his lips with a greedy arc, when you die, I will treat your concubines well. The portrait in front of her is none other than Ji Hongii, the empress of the Kangyu dynasty. He had long heard that the emperor of Qin was lustful, fatuous, and extravagant. He had collected countless nymphs and fairies from all over the world, and brought them into his harem, where he could enjoy them every day. It is said that the emperor of the Qin dynasty also specially opened a fairy palace in the sky, where there were countless concubines, and they were all beautiful and fragrant. This matter has spread throughout the Apocalypse territory and is already known to everyone. It has attracted the envy of countless young talents who want to replace him, and this Nangongyu is one of them. This was the purpose of his trip to Daqin this time. An evil smile appeared on Nangongyu's lips. Nangongyu, take me to Tianlan territory. Suddenly, a clear and sweet voice sounded from outside the door, breaking the charming thoughts in Nangongyu's mind. Hearing the voice, Nangongyu's face became uncertain, but then he regained his composure. He turned around slowly, looked at the girl in front of him, and said indifferently, Didn't you promise father to stay at home? The girl in front of him was none other than his haunting, ghostly sister Nangongyu. Nangongyu smiled sweetly and said, Father doesn't agree, but you are my brother, you can take me there secretly. Nangongyu shook his head and said firmly, It's impossible, don't think about it, I won't agree. Nangongyu tilted her little head, and a playful smile suddenly appeared on the corners of her warm lips. Really? Then I will tell my father about your secret meeting with a certain woman. I believe that my father will be furious, right? After all, that woman is his most beloved concubine. The corners of her mouth had a sweet curve, which made her look pretty and cute, making her unable to bear the slightest anger. But the words he said made Nangongyu instantly feel cold all over, and a chill rushed straight to his forehead. What? Nangong Lingtian's face, which was originally calm, suddenly darkened, and his eyes narrowed, flashing with a dangerous light. Nangongyu opened her slender jade fingers, which were as long as green onions, and said, Not only that, but I also know that you and the seventh elder's wife secretly. When the seventh elder was not at home. Shut up. Nangongyu shouted angrily, he never expected that this little girl would know these things. Presumably the other party must have used the power of the holy body to secretly spy on him without his knowledge. Deep fear and murderous intent flashed deep in Nangongyu's eyes. Nangongyu curled her lips, with a look of grievance on her face. Brother, don't worry, I didn't see anything, I just heard some sounds. She whispered softly, looking charming, like a little deer, take me there, I promise to help you keep the secret. Nangongyu took a deep breath, closed his eyes and said, Okay, you go back and clean up, I will take you there. Nangongyu's pretty face was immediately filled with joy, and then she cheered happily and ran out the door, Okay, wait for me. Looking at Nangongyu's cheerful figure, Nangongyu suddenly unclenched his clenched fists, and then sighed. Although he hates his only sister, there is really nothing he can do against her. His sister was his father's favorite, and he would never dare to have any thoughts about her. Nangongyu looked back at the many maids kneeling aside, with a cold and fierce look in his eyes. My sister can't move, but these people heard things they shouldn't hear, so naturally they can't stay. Many maids seemed to have noticed something. He was so frightened that he quickly fell to the ground, kowtowed and begged for mercy. Young master, please spare your life. I swear, I will never reveal a single word. Young master, please forgive me. I have no second thoughts. I ask you to forgive us. Hearing this, Nangongyu's eyes became more murderous. Bang bang bang. A series of heavy blows fell on the chests of several women. Immediately blood splattered and screams continued, and the maids died tragically on the spot. Remember, only the dead can keep secrets. Nangongyu said indifferently, with a crazy and bloodthirsty light shining in his eyes. It was as if what he had just done was not killing people, but crushing a few ants. After doing all this, Nangongyu turned around and left the room, disappearing into the darkness. P.S. A 3,000-word chapter is too long for me. You sisters-in-law are so happy. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 263. Apocalypse Domain, Ziwei Immortal Palace. This is a building that covers a vast area, like a huge palace, towering into the sky. Ziwei Immortal Palace is the top holy land in the Apocalypse Domain. Its power is huge, its foundation is profound, far surpassing the first-class sects, and even vaguely suppressing other holy lands and sects. However, since the 10 saints of Ziwei Immortal Palace fell in Tianlan Domain, the strength and foundation of Ziwei Immortal Palace have declined sharply. However, even so, Ziwei Immortal Palace still stands at the top of the Apocalypse Domain. Because except for the Palace Master of Ziwei Immortal Palace, Mo Xianchen, no one knows how much and how deep the foundation of Ziwei Immortal Palace is. At this time, the huge Ziwei Immortal Palace was brightly lit and silent. In a luxurious hall deep in the fairy palace, a group of armored guards were guarding outside the door. And in the hall, all the guards and maids were dismissed outside, not daring to get close. Just because there was a man and a woman sitting in the hall. The man was handsome, dignified, and dressed in a luxurious robe. He exuded a sense of majesty, and his eyebrows were gentle and elegant, full of bookish atmosphere. The woman was charming and enchanting, with a curvy figure, white skin, tender, and a pair of soul-stirring eyes. Her eyes revealed an extremely arrogant attitude, like a proud girl of the ninth heaven, looking down on all living beings. The two of them were extremely outstanding in appearance, and their temperaments were even more noble, as if they were isolated from the world and incompatible with the mundane world. They looked at the people in the hall quietly, with indifferent eyes, and almost no emotional fluctuations could be seen. As the master of Ziwei Fairy Palace, Mo Xianchen stood aside at this moment, looking extremely respectful. Ancestor, there is really no way to alarm you this time, and the disciple is also helpless. After a moment, Mo Xianchen finally couldn't help breaking the silence and said carefully to the man in gorgeous clothes above. The tone was extremely sincere, with a bit of guilt. The identity of this man and woman was obviously extraordinary, and their origins must be extremely terrifying, as Mo Xianchen, the master of Ziwei Immortal Palace, called them old ancestors in person. The man in gorgeous clothes nodded and waved his hand lightly. I am listening, you can talk slowly, don't be nervous. Mo Xianchen pondered for a moment, and said faintly, "Old ancestor, I don't want to disturb you, but Xiwei Immortal Palace suffered heavy losses this time. If we can't save our face, we may lose the position of the leader of the sect alliance in the northern region of Tiankai domain, and even be attacked by other holy places, especially the Baidu section." Mo Xuanhuan's tone was quite heavy, and his expression was not good. Xiwei Immortal Palace is the controller of the sect alliance in the northern region of Tiankai domain. This position is both glory and power, but also an abyss and a fire pit. If you are not careful, you will be burned. Countless holy lands and sects in the Apocalypse domain are eyeing the position of Xiwei Immortal Palace, and they wish they could replace it. Once the outside world knows the true situation of Xiwei Immortal Palace at this time, or if Xiwei Immortal Palace performs poorly in this battle against Dakin, it will inevitably attract strange ideas from other major holy lands and sects. At that time, Xiwei Immortal Palace will be in danger. Therefore, Xiwei Immortal Palace now urgently needs a truly powerful existence that can sweep away all enemies to deter those enemies who are eyeing Xiwei Immortal Palace. Oh! Hearing Mo Xuanhuan's words, the man in gorgeous clothes finally frowned, his tone was cold, and there was a strong murderous intent. "Who is so bold as to provoke our Xiwei Immortal Palace? Are you looking for death?" His tone was cold, murderous, and terrifying. "Humph!" The charming and enchanting woman in the hall also snorted coldly. Their eyes suddenly became sharp, like a sword across the sky. "Baidu sect? Humph, the Baidu sect wants to get involved in the alliance control of the northern region of Tiankai territory. It's just a foolish dream. Do they have the ability?" The two of them spoke in a very arrogant tone, but they were not boastful, but they had enough capital. Because they are all ancestors of Xiwei Immortal Palace, the lowest cultivation has reached the 7th level of Saint, and their strength is extremely strong. "Alas, ancestor, this battle is of great importance, and I have to ask you to move." Mo Xianchen sighed, and a few traces of fatigue appeared on his face. "Dakin killed 10 saints of my Xiwei Fairy Palace. This account will be settled sooner or later." After a pause, he continued, "Although we can hold our troops for the time being, bide our time and wait for the opportunity. But if we wait for Dakin to grow stronger and then retaliate, it will be too late. By then, the situation of Xiwei Fairy Palace will be even more difficult. That's why I asked the ancestor and your wife to come out of the mountain to destroy Dakin together and wash away the shame for the sect." His face was solemn and solemn. "Well, Dakin really deserves to die." The man in gorgeous clothes nodded. Then, he slowly stood up, his eyes were sharp, like a blade, revealing a sense of dominance and sharpness, and he said indifferently, "I want to see what kind of ability that Daqin has to dare to kill the 10 elders of my Xiwei Fairy Palace." As he spoke, a majestic power burst out, shaking the hall. He was tall and majestic, and there was a rolling purple air around him. A brutal and tyrannical aura dissipated, making people feel suffocated. Hearing this, many elders and deacons of Xiwei Fairy Palace in the hall were ecstatic and excited. "Haha, with the ancestor taking action personally, Daqin will definitely die. It's just the great Qin dynasty. How dare they challenge our Xiwei Fairy Palace? They are simply overestimating themselves. Yes, with the ancestor here, any enemy will have to surrender. The great Qin is too rampant. We must give them a hard blow, otherwise how can we save our face? This great Qin emperor actually dared to harm the elders of my Xiwei Fairy Palace. He deserves to die. We must cut the grass and root it out, and never let it go. The ancestor has unparalleled magical powers. He must kill the tyrant of the great Qin." In the hall, everyone was excited. In their impression, the ancestor is the pillar of the Xiwei Fairy Palace, with the ability to turn the rivers and seas upside down and catch the stars and the moon. He once single-handedly destroyed a saint-level sect and shocked Tiankai. With the ancestor, it is not easy to destroy the mere Great Qin. What's more, this attack on the Great Qin is not just the power of their Ziwei Fairy Palace, but the power of the entire Tiankai domain. They just don't believe that the Great Qin can withstand the joint attack of so many forces. At this time, the seemingly elegant and gentle man in gorgeous clothes chuckled a few times and said to the beautiful woman beside him, "Liang Xin, what do you think?" The woman lazily leaned on the chair, her elbows resting on the armrests, looking at the man in gorgeous clothes on the high seat, stretching her slender legs, with an attractive posture, affectionate eyebrows, and red lips. "Whatever my husband says, it's fine. Anyway, I'm free, so it's not bad to see the Great Qin dynasty." "Yeah." The man in gorgeous clothes nodded slowly, with a charming and confident arc at the corner of his mouth, and two rays of light burst out of his eyes, as if they were real. "The Qin dynasty is nothing but a bunch of chickens and dogs. It's easy to destroy it." After saying that, he suddenly turned around, his eyes swept around, and his tone was sonorous and powerful. "Pass my order, everyone is ready. Tomorrow, we will flatten the Qin dynasty and sacrifice the heroic souls of our clan with blood." "Yes." In an instant, everyone in the hall bowed and agreed, with madness and passion flashing in their eyes. "Long live the ancestor! Ziwei Fairy Palace will win. The ancestor is invincible." Amid the excitement, countless people knelt on the ground and bowed to pay their respects. "Let's go and see what the Qin dynasty is like." After saying this, the man in gorgeous clothes took the lead and stepped forward and left the hall. Beside him, the charming woman with a smile on her lips hurriedly followed. "At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid." Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 264. At the same time, in the southern part of Tiankai territory, there was the Xuanhuan Mountains. This Xuanhuan mountain range is a forbidden area of life in the Apocalypse domain. It is said that there is a group of ancient relics dormant in it, white tigers. The white tiger Lord Killer is an ancient beast with tremendous strength, unrivaled across the 9 states. It is said that it can even swallow the sun, absorb the lunar yin, and refine chaos. It is incredibly powerful. Moreover, the white tiger has a ferocious temperament. Once disturbed, it will be a catastrophe. Therefore, even though the monks in the Apocalypse domain covet it, no force dares to enter the Xuanhuan Mountains, or even get close. Rumor has it that there was a powerful man in the quasi-emperor realm who wanted to conquer the 10,000 Ren Mountains. As a result, he was seriously injured by the white tiger's punch and has never been seen again. Over time, the Xuanhuan mountain range became a taboo, and even 9th-level saints did not dare to go deep into it. On this day, the sky suddenly became gloomy, and patches of dark clouds surged in, covering the sky and dimming the sunlight a lot. Boom! Thunderous noises continued to explode, and the void twisted and boiled. Vaguely, a majestic ancient temple stands under the sky. The whole temple is shining with bright golden light, like gold poured, exuding a sense of antiquity, mystery, and desolation. Around the temple, the clouds were steaming and the clouds were glowing, and the spiritual energy was surging. It seemed that there were countless gods and demons roaring and roaring vaguely. Hula! In the temple, a hazy white mist suddenly rose up. The mist was misty and had an ethereal smell, as if it came from the 9 nether abyss. After a while, the white fog gradually dissipated. In the center of the temple, a huge altar suddenly appeared. On the altar, extremely complicated runes were engraved. On the top of the altar, a mysterious and majestic tiger-shaped portrait is engraved. Shua! The altar shook slightly, as if it contained an ancient beast. The next moment, a ray of bronze light soared into the sky from the temple, cut through the sky, and flew into the sky. At that moment, the wind and clouds surged, and the huge white tiger's shadow covered the sun and moon. The dark clouds in the sky were dyed red in an instant, and endless flames burned, turning into a doomsday scene. Boom! Immediately afterwards, extremely thick red lightning struck down, illuminating the entire mountain range scarlet. Under the tens of thousands of red thunder, a woman in white was sitting on the altar, with her legs crossed and a huge white tiger pattern emerging behind her. This woman's appearance is stunning, her aura is extremely ethereal, and her whole body is filled with divine light, just like a banished immortal. At this time, on the surface of her body, there were countless divine lights and intertwined symbols, obviously deducing something. Suddenly, she frowned slightly, opened her eyes, and looked to the southwest. In her pupils, a coquettish flower from the other shore swayed. And the moment she opened her eyes, the strange phenomena in the sky disappeared without a trace, as if the terrifying scenes just now were just hallucinations. I can't even deduce it, haha, interesting, interesting. The woman in white groaned, her voice cold and full of magnetism. She stood up and stretched. In an instant, her extremely graceful body came into view, outlining amazing curves that aroused people's imagination. This woman's appearance is stunning, her skin is crystal clear and can be broken by blowing, like an exquisite and flawless work of art. At this moment, the woman in white stood quietly, and the temple was silent. Only she was wearing a white dress and dancing like a limbo fairy, which made people mesmerized. She just stood there so quietly, but there was an invisible aura covering all directions, giving people a strong and oppressive feeling. Miss. A beautiful figure quickly walked to the woman's side and greeted her respectfully. This woman has a delicate appearance, but she is dressed in men's clothing. Moreover, she carries a long bow on her back, holds a silver crossbow, and wears strong armor. She looks very tough, but her figure is exquisite and graceful. How about it? Have you found out the traces of the Emperor of Qin? The woman's voice was cold and she said calmly. The woman dressed in men's clothing nodded heavily and continued to report. Miss Hui, we have investigated clearly. Qin Mu left the Qin Imperial City 2 days ago, but we don't know his specific whereabouts. The woman in white raised her head, looked out the window, her eyes flashed with light, and murmured to herself. My father sent me a message saying that Qin Mu has a great secret. If I can obtain this great secret, my path to immortality will become smoother, even surpassing that of my eldest sister. The voice of the woman in white clothes was very soft, but it was like thunder in the ears of the woman dressed in men's clothing, and her heart beat violently. Obviously, the eldest sister mentioned by the woman in white made her feel extremely scared. My subordinates will do their best to find traces of Qin Mu for the young lady. The woman dressed in men's clothing replied respectfully, and at the same time she sighed secretly in her heart, this Qin Mu is being targeted by his own lady, I'm afraid he won't be able to survive for long. The woman in white nodded and glanced at the sculptures around the temple with a strange light in her eyes. Sister, I will definitely surpass you. Her mouth is fragrant and her words are clear, like beads falling on a jade plate, crisp and sweet, which makes people intoxicated. But the words he spoke had a hint of chill in them, making people tremble uncontrollably. She walked deep into the temple, where there was a shrine enshrining a tiger-shaped stone statue. Although it was just a stone statue, it was still lifelike, mighty, and domineering, like a real ancient beast descending to the world, which was frightening. Then she turned and looked at a certain place in the void, and chuckled. Then she raised her jade feet slightly and stomped lightly on the altar under her feet. Buzz. Accompanied by a low muffled sound, a thin layer of ripples spread out. In an instant, the entire mountain range suddenly shook violently. Rocks collapsed, and big trees fell. An unspeakable breath of destruction spread. Then, under the surprised gaze of the woman in men's clothing, the extremely tall altar slowly floated up and floated into the void. Finally, the altar merged into the void and disappeared. Huh? Miss, you actually moved the Xuanhuan altar away. The woman in men's clothing widened her eyes, her face full of surprise. The Xuanhuan altar is a treasure of the White Tiger clan, specially used to suppress the White Tiger clan's luck. It is also a space treasure, which has the function of space shuttle and can even cross the boundless void. It is said that an ancestor once crossed the galaxy with this item and killed the enemy thousands of miles away. I didn't expect that this time, in order to hunt Qin Mu, the lady actually brought out the Xuanhuan altar. No matter how good the treasure is, it is just an external thing. Use it when you need it. The corner of the woman's mouth curled up, revealing a charming smile, and then she pointed her toes, and the whole person turned into a ray of light, carrying the woman in men's clothing, and disappeared in the vast mountains. And Qin Mu, the initiator of all this, was unaware of it. At this time, he was in the demon refining pot, lying on a 100 square meter dragon couch, hugging his left and right, enjoying the blessing of all women, and had no idea what happened in the apocalypse domain, let alone that he was about to usher in a shocking killing disaster. Of course, even if Qin Mu knew, he would not care. And who is this killing disaster? There is still a question mark. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 265. Inside the demon refining pot, there is a space of its own, where the spiritual energy is dense and the spiritual spring is flowing, which is magnificent. In addition, the spiritual energy in this space is so rich that it almost condenses into liquid. In addition to the spiritual energy, various precious herbs take root in the spiritual spring, blooming with brilliant light, absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth for cultivation. These herbs are all precious materials for alchemy and talisman making, and any one of them is worth a fortune. But in the demon refining pot, they are everywhere, and even the medicinal materials of the holy medicine level can be seen everywhere. However, the most eye-catching are the two towering trees that span the entire space. One of them is green and dripping, like jade, and each branch is crystal clear, as if it is made of crystal, exuding a mysterious ancient atmosphere. The leaves are golden in color, with divine patterns flowing and shining, as if containing a piece of heaven and earth, containing infinite mysteries. Faintly, there are waves of mysterious sounds coming from the leaves, like the sound of the Tao, which makes people feel relaxed and happy, and deeply comprehended. It just stands there, as if it has existed since ancient times, eternal and immortal. The other one is even more exaggerated, with branches crisscrossing, covering half of the sky, as thick as a mountain, and vines all over the trunk, which are endless, like the meridians of the human body, containing terrifying vitality. And each vine is full of green fruits like babies, like stars dotted on it, shining and dazzling. At this moment, it echoes with another towering tree, like the two poles of yin and yang, forming a complementary resonance. This is the enlightenment tree and the ginseng fruit tree. The enlightenment tree, as the name suggests, can help cultivators comprehend the laws of the Tao of heaven and earth. For cultivators, it is much more precious than any treasure. Just using the last enlightenment leaf can help him avoid many detours and directly break through the realm. The ginseng fruit tree is even more extraordinary. It is a genius treasure of the level of immortal medicine. It can bring back the dead, reverse vitality, and increase lifespan. This kind of immortal medicine is sought after by even the emperors. And now, these two legendary sacred trees appear in the same space. If this news spreads, it will be enough to alarm the 9 domains of the human race and even the entire 42 domains. Of course, the most important thing is Qin Mu's big bed. This is a big bed with an area of 100 square meters. It is as white as snow and emits a faint fluorescence, as if it is carved from white jade. And the most important thing is that this bed is soft enough. Lying on it is like being in the clouds. It is made of countless layers of 10,000-year-old silk and has incredible flexibility. Qin Mu sat cross-legged on the giant bed at this time, practicing the skills and absorbing the spiritual energy in the demon refining pot like a whale swallowing the sea. However, although the spiritual energy contained in the demon refining pot is far beyond what ordinary people can compare to, it is still a drop in the bucket for Xuanhuan now, insignificant. Because the breakthrough of each level of the saint realm is as difficult as ascending to heaven, and the resources required are an extremely terrifying number. Fortunately, Xuanhuan has another way. That is the immortal level dual cultivation technique. With this technique, plus enough dual cultivation objects, breaking through is as easy as eating and drinking. Soon, a wisp of pure and flawless spiritual energy flowed into his lower abdomen, and then flowed along the 8 extraordinary meridians to the meridians of the whole body, nourishing the flesh and blood, washing the bones, tempering the 5 internal organs and the soul. Then it turned into a hazy mist on the surface of the body, enveloping him. Gradually, Xuanhuan's breath became more and more vigorous. Rumble. The sky shook. The clouds turned upside down. The sun and the moon turned upside down. Yin and yang met. This situation lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. Boom. A thunderous sound rang out from Xuanhuan's body. His bones crackled. A stream of extremely pure white innate energy gushed out from his pores. The void within 3 feet around him was distorted and deformed, emitting bursts of whimpering and wailing, as if unable to withstand the pressure, and began to curl up and tremble wildly. Even Xuanhuan's muscles swelled slightly, and his skin became red and crystal clear, as if filled with endless power, giving people a sense of indestructibility. A stream of majestic and vast pressure spread from Xuanhuan's body and poured out of his body like a tide. The power in Xuanhuan's body rolled like a tide, surging wildly. The more than 100 square meters of cold silk bed finally couldn't withstand the huge pressure, and it completely exploded, turning into ashes and disappearing into the void. Shoo-la-la. Pieces of cold silk cloth fell all over the sky, like a snowflake, crystal clear and gorgeous. It was like the catkins swaying in the wind. The spring scenery was boundless, beautiful, and turbulent. Boom. The next moment, a milky white glow shot out suddenly, illuminating the sky. Then, a surge of unparalleled momentum suddenly swept across the world, sweeping in all directions, setting off a raging wave. In an instant, the sky trembled, the spiritual clouds rolled, and there were thousands of auspicious colors. After a long time, finally, everything returned to calm. Xuanhuan slowly opened his eyes were bright and clear, like glass, and like the sword light, with a terrifying edge. In just a moment, his aura soared several times, extremely powerful. His long black hair danced in disorder, his eyes were as bright as stars, like an abyss and a prison, and breathtaking. The skin was crystal clear and glowing with brilliant rays of light, looking like a god resurrected, full of majestic charm. Huh! Xuanhuan exhaled a breath of turbid air, slowly stood up, with a look of joy on his face. I didn't expect to step into the 5th level of Saint in just 3 days. With my current combat power, I'm afraid I can challenge the 8th level of Saint, or even the 9th level of Saint King. He murmured to himself, his confidence boosted. Although his realm was only improved by 1 or 2 levels, his strength increased by several times. Especially his physical strength, which was more solid and condensed. He had undergone an unprecedented transformation and surpassed ordinary saints. Even compared to the ancient true dragon, which was known for its invincible flesh, he was not inferior, but even better. And not only him, but also the women's army that came with him on this trip, all made great progress and their strength was significantly improved. They were originally the daughters of heaven, with both their cultivation and talents being the best. Now with the blessing of the enlightenment tree and the personal training and guidance of Xuanhuan, their cultivation has made great progress, and the speed of their realm climbing is terrifying. I saw those women covered in veils all looking up at Xuanhuan, their beautiful eyes blurred, their eyes rolling, with strong admiration and worship. They were already the most beautiful women in the country, and now their faces are more beautiful than before. Each of them is so beautiful that it is breathtaking. Even through the veil, you can vaguely see their exquisite and graceful curves, which are full of temptation and soul-stirring. At this time, standing there in a row, it is like a group of fairies descending to the world, which makes people excited. Even a few women who have always been extremely cold and taciturn have beautiful eyes and can't look away from Xuanhuan's back for a long time. Before entering the demon refining pot, they could not imagine that there would be such a paradise in the world. What they didn't imagine was that cultivation was not only so simple and fast, but also enjoyable. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mi and Bulletin Leng. Chapter 266. In just a few days, their strength has made a qualitative leap. Not only that, the impurities in their bodies have been swept away, and the whole person is refreshed, as if reborn. At this moment, except for a few people with poor talents, basically everyone has reached the realm of Yuan Shen. And their potential has also been activated a lot. As long as the cultivation is stable, they will definitely be able to make another breakthrough. This speed is absolutely shocking. And the speed and comfort of this kind of cultivation make them want to abandon their reserve and throw themselves into Xuanhuan's arms again. They even think that even if they sacrifice their souls, it is worth it. This kind of fortune is simply indescribable in words. However, those women who have seen Xuanhuan's methods long ago, such as Zhang Luoshan, Ji Hongii and others, are much calmer. After all, they have seen more exaggerated things. When he was in the northern border, Xuanhuan was a miracle. He killed many saints and strong men with his gestures, and swept away all enemies without a single opponent. That scene was deeply imprinted in the minds of the women and could not be forgotten. What? Are you not satisfied yet? Just when the women were about to move, a cold voice suddenly came from their ears, pulling them back to reality from their fantasy. The pretty faces of the women instantly turned red. Your Majesty. They bit their lips and lowered their heads, their voices were as soft as mosquitoes. However, their shy appearance made people more imaginative. Xuanhuan glanced at the group of women and couldn't help laughing. Don't worry, I will definitely guide you to practice often. Hearing this, the faces of the women suddenly became more blushing, but their eyes were full of expectation and excitement. They seemed to see the happy life in the future, but don't let your imagination run wild. The women were daydreaming. Your Majesty, what is the plan for our expedition this time? Finally, Xuanhuan asked the main question. She stood in front of Xuanhuan respectfully, bowed her head and asked, her heart pounding, fearing that her words would ruin Xuanhuan's interest. But even though she was scared to death, she still spoke. Because this matter is of vital importance, it concerns the life and death of the entire Qin dynasty. As His Majesty's concubine and a member of this expedition, she should remind His Majesty. Since His Majesty left Chang'an City, he has been working hard in this space and has never gone out. It seems that he is not in a hurry at all, which makes Xuanhuan very worried. After all, the situation outside is not very optimistic. Does His Majesty intend to stay in this strange secret realm forever? The other women also restrained their thoughts, pricked up their ears, and listened carefully. They were also very curious. Plan. Xuanhuan narrowed his eyes slightly, revealing a hint of playfulness. The plan is very simple. First, find the place where they gather. When they are all together, we will wipe them out. Ah! Hearing his words, all the women were confused. What? That's it? No need to prepare thoroughly? No need to set traps? Go directly to the nest. What kind of plan is this? For a moment, all the women were stunned. Although their strength has been significantly improved, they must know that their enemies are not ordinary sects. They are enemies of an entire domain. Those holy places are forces with the inheritance of the emperor. It can be said that they can shake the 8 wastelands and 4 domains with just a stomp of their feet. Such opponents, how can they be easily dealt with? Your Majesty, what if there are many saints ambushing there? If you rush in like this, aren't you risking your life? Xuanhuan frowned and said. She originally thought that Qin Mu would set up a shocking formation and ambush in advance like the invasion of Chang'an City by the northern border. But she didn't expect Qin Mu to want to go to the opponent's camp, which was too rash. The other women also looked at Qin Mu with worry, hoping that he would consider it carefully. A mere saint is not worth mentioning. Qin Mu shook his head, his expression calm, and said lightly, "Don't worry, I cherish my life more than you do, how could I take risks?" Hearing this, the women breathed a sigh of relief, and the big stone hanging in their hearts finally fell. Xuanhuan looked at Qin Mu's confident look, and suddenly felt a little dazed. In her memory, His Majesty has always been so confident, as if nothing can stop his steps. She guessed His Majesty's thoughts for a long time, but she could never figure it out. She only felt that it was more and more hazy and mysterious, like an immortal in the sky, which made her unable to figure it out. "I believe in His Majesty," she pursed her lips and said softly. The women also showed sweet smiles. For them, it was a great fortune to be able to follow Qin Mu. Not to mention following His Majesty to conquer the world, make achievements, and become famous. "Then shall we go now?" Xuanhuan asked again. Qin Mu nodded, "Well, let's go." The women were immediately excited and asked Qin Mu if they should wear armor or weapons. Qin Mu waved his hand. What armor or weapons? He didn't plan to let these women participate in the battle. Qin Mu thought about it and took only Xuanhuan, Ji Hongii, Zhang Luoshan and Su Mei out of the demon refining pot. The other women stayed in the demon refining pot. With Qin Mu's departure, the demon refining pot also returned to its original appearance, but many women were still immersed in the scene just now. "Your Majesty is really the reincarnation of an immortal, so amazing." A woman looked at him with an admiring expression and couldn't help but praise him. "Let's work hard to practice and catch up with Your Majesty as soon as possible, so that we can personally accompany Your Majesty to the imperial expedition," another woman said with anticipation. "Yes, yes, yes," the women quickly agreed. They are now full of expectations for the future. The Tianlang city, the ancient border city closest to the Tianlan domain in the Tiankai domain. The city wall, which is hundreds of feet high, goes straight to the sky, exuding a murderous aura and is extremely solid. The soldiers patrolling on the city wall at this moment have sharp eyes and exude a fierce murderous aura. Who? The sky is gloomy, the wind is raging, and dark clouds cover most of the sky. The flag of the Tiankai Alliance is flying high, fluttering over the Tianlang city. At the gate of the ancient city, countless monks heard the news and swarmed here. The dense crowds filled the surroundings, and the noise was deafening. In just a few days, this remote ancient city has gathered tens of millions of monks, as mighty as a dark cloud, with a deafening momentum. The 5 major sects have joined forces. This is definitely the largest war in the history of the Apocalypse domain. Look! What's that on the horizon? Suddenly, a cry of surprise rang out in the crowd. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 267. Everyone looked up. I saw 2 black figures in the distant sky approaching quickly. In the blink of an eye, they crossed thousands of mountains and rivers and arrived within the city. Hiss! Then, what is that? What a terrifying power! After seeing the true appearance of the black dot clearly, Everyone's pupils shrank sharply and they gasped in shock. At the end of the line of sight were two huge dragon beast chariots, all as black as ink, shining with a cold metallic sheen. On the wheel, there are still 9 ferocious dragons entwined, with teeth and claws showing, ferocious and terrifying, exuding cold murderous intent. They blocked the sky and covered a large area of the sky. Their huge bodies stretched between the sky and the earth, tearing apart the void like two sharp blades. On the back of the dragon beast, there are an astonishing number of monks sitting, standing in various armors, majestic. Waves of terrifying fluctuations emanated from this army, making people tremble with fear. This is the dragon beast chariot of Fenglay Pavilion. Looking at the emblem and flag on the huge dragon beast chariot, bursts of exclamations broke out from the crowd. Fenglay Pavilion, as one of the largest forces in the Apocalypse domain, has a profound foundation and powerful strength. Especially the dragon beast chariot, known as the number 1 chariot in the Apocalypse domain, which has defeated many sex formations. This is the unique symbol of Fenglay Pavilion. But what they didn't expect was that this time Fenglay Pavilion actually sent 2 dragon beast chariots to fight. The crowd instantly became excited, looking up with excitement. It seems that Fenglay Pavilion attaches great importance to this battle, and actually dispatched 2 dragon beast chariots at once. As far as I know, Fenglay Pavilion only has 3 in total, right? Yes, every dragon beast chariot is made of precious black iron, and it is said that it is inlaid with the dragon bone of a dragon with a trace of true dragon blood. Fenglay Pavilion would usually be reluctant to use such a treasure. Fenglay Pavilion is indeed serious this time. Hey, the great Qin dynasty is dead this time. That's natural. The master of Fenglay Pavilion is a veteran saint and strong man with unrivaled strength. He has been the leader of the sect alliance in the southern region of Apocalypse territory for many years. Everyone was talking and excited. Obviously, Fenglay Pavilion was very serious this time. Not only did they send out the strongest dragon beast chariot, they also sent out a large number of disciples. But there is nothing wrong with this. After all, this battle is related to the future changes in the pattern of the Apocalypse territory, and no one dares to neglect it. Ho ho! The dragon beast neighed and roared, and the sound shook the sky, attracting the attention of countless monks. Their voices are extremely harsh, as if they contain some kind of magic power, and can easily evoke the ferocious and violent emotions hidden in the soul, making people go crazy and lose their mind. The faces of many monks in the city all changed, and they stared at the 2 huge dragon beast chariots with fear. Fortunately, Fenglay Pavilion's move was just to show off its muscles to the world, and had no substantial attack power, so everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Boom! The dragon beast chariot advanced slowly, causing the earth to shake, as if hundreds of millions of creatures were coming, and the sound was extremely terrifying. Ha ha ha, Fenglay Pavilion is really domineering. We will definitely win this battle. The arrival of Fenglay Pavilion gave many monks in the Apocalypse Alliance endless courage and boosted their morale. Soon, the 2 dragon beast chariots slowly lowered their altitude and stopped in mid-air 100 feet away from Tianlang City. Crack dash! The door of the dragon beast chariot was opened, and thousands of young men and women wearing gorgeous clothes flew out. They stood around the dragon beast chariot and glanced at the entire Tianlang city and the densely packed Apocalypse Alliance monks outside the city. A pair of eyes with incomparable indifference, full of arrogance, and a posture that looks down on all living things, as if this place is simply the territory of ants, which can be destroyed easily. The young man at the head was wearing a silver white robe, with a majestic appearance, sword-shaped eyebrows, and starry eyes. He was extraordinarily handsome, and his whole body was shrouded in a mysterious aura. At this moment, he closed his eyes slightly and sat quietly cross-legged on the top of the dragon beast chariot, as if he were a god, looking down on all living beings from a high position. To his right, a girl in a purple skirt stood as beautiful as a picture scroll. She had a beautiful face, delicate facial features, and skin that could be broken by blows, like a work of art. Her beauty transcends everything, captivates the country, and is enough to bring disaster to all living beings. But at this moment, she was quietly and obediently following the young man in white, like a maid. She is Fairy Yuetian, one of the top 10 fairies in the Apocalypse domain. And the identity of the young man in silver robe was revealed. He was the young master of Fenglay Pavilion, Fen Yunhao. It's Fen Yunhao and Fairy Yuetian. These two are the most outstanding inheritors of Fenglay Pavilion. I heard that the two of them are natural Taoist couples, and they are childhood sweethearts who grew up together. They have always been harmonious and loving. But I heard that they haven't consummated their marriage yet, because Fen Yunhao's cultivation method requires him to maintain his Yuan-Yang body. That's really hard work. If it were me, I would definitely not practice those broken skills. Haha, what do you know? Which truly strong person doesn't have great perseverance? People like you will never be able to glimpse a higher realm in this life. Everyone started talking with envy in their eyes. Fairy Yuetian is one of the top 10 fairies recognized by Tiankai domain. Her strength is not the most outstanding among all the Tianjiao in the Tiankai domain, but her beauty and temperament are the best and famous all over the world. Coupled with her status, as well as her own talent and cultivation, she has become the fairy in the hearts of countless cultivators in the Tiankai domain. Unfortunately, Fairy Yuetian already has someone in her heart. That is Fen Yunhao, the young master of Fenglay Pavilion, the most dazzling Tianjiao in Fenglay Pavilion in the past few hundred years. As the young master, he not only has a high status, but also has rare talent in the world. At the age of 20, he broke through to the Yuanshen realm and ranked among the peerless Tianjiao in the Tiankai domain. Looking at the entire Tiankai domain, there are few people who can match this talent. He is recognized as one of the strongest Tianjiao in the younger generation of Tiankai domain. And now what they see is just as that person said, the two are talented and beautiful, a match made in heaven. Even if everyone is very sad, they can only envy. At this time, Fen Yunhao suddenly opened his eyes. Two terrifying eyes burst out, as if the sun had descended, dispelling the dark clouds and rendering the entire Tianlang city golden. A strong and sharp aura spread out, suffocating people. Many weaker cultivators could not even withstand this pressure and retreated. Wind and thunder art. Fen Yunhao shouted coldly, and a dazzling purple light emerged from his body. The whole person seemed to be bathed in thunder, with great power. He stretched out one hand, and purple lightning burst out from his body, condensing in his palm, forming an energy ball flashing with terrifying lightning, releasing destructive waves. Boom boom. The next moment, lightning and thunder, wind and rain. The scene was extremely terrifying, as if the end of the world had come, and it was terrifying. Everyone was terrified, and their scalps were numb. Is this the power of Fen Yunhao, the young master of Fenglay Pavilion? At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 268. It is incredible and unbelievable that such a terrifying celestial phenomenon can be summoned with just one move. Everyone's face was pale, without a trace of blood, and they felt that their souls were torn apart by this thunder. Tisk tisk, Fen Yunhao is worthy of being one of the strongest geniuses in the Apocalypse domain. His strength is too strong. Yes, at this age and with this strength. Even if you look at the entire human race, I am afraid there are not many opponents. Although I have heard that Fen Yunhao, the young master of Fenglay Pavilion, is the first evil genius of Fenglay Pavilion, with tremendous strength, and he has mastered the emperor-level skills Wind and Thunderju that has been passed down to this day, now I see that it is true. Everyone was talking in a low voice, and their words were full of emotion and shock. Fen Yunhao looked at the frightened and envious eyes of the crowd, and his heart was greatly satisfied, and a barely perceptible smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Originally, his father, the master of Fenglay Pavilion, did not want him to come to attack Dakin this time, thinking that this trip was too dangerous. But he had been in seclusion for so long, and finally cultivated the wind and thunder art to a state of some success. How could he miss such a good opportunity to show off? As for the danger? This time, he brought the replica of the imperial weapon Thunder God Hammer of the Wind and Thunder Pavilion, and several great elders above the 5th level of the Saint Realm came with him. Such a lineup is enough to sweep away any major sect and family. What is there to fear about a mere Great Qin? His goal is the treasure house of the Great Qin dynasty. Those things are all in his pocket. He Fen Yunhao is destined to surpass the 9 realms and dominate the continent. Fen Yunhao's heart was moved, and he looked down at everyone from a high place. Then he waved his hand, and the terrifying lightning dissipated instantly, and the sky quickly returned to normal, as if it had never appeared. Fen Yunhao stood with his hands behind his back, the aura flowing from his body became deeper and deeper. He said lightly, "Fellow Taoists, you have come from afar, thank you for your hard work." After everyone was stunned for a moment, they hurriedly bowed to Fen Yunhao and clasped their fists, and responded respectfully. "Meet the young pavilion master." Yes, Fen Yunhao nodded slightly, then took the fairy Yuetian into the air, turned into a purple stream of light and rushed into Tianlang City. Then, he stepped on the void and landed on the city wall from the sky, with his hands behind his back, like a young supreme being standing high above. Then, the elite disciples and elders of Fenglay Pavilion also got off the dragon beast chariot and stood on Fen Yunhao's left and right. They were tall and straight, and each of them had an unparalleled energy fluctuation released from their bodies, which was shocking. Especially those purple-robed old men, their aura was like a deep sea, and people dared not approach them. However, everyone's eyes were not on them at this time, but all gathered on Fairy Yuetian. Fairy Yuetian walked slowly with lotus steps, her jade feet lightly lifted, spotless, and her whole body was lingering with hazy fairy mist, like a dream, as if she had walked out of a painting. An oval-shaped pretty face was delicate, with shyness between her eyebrows, like a blooming water lotus, beautiful and inviolable, pure and noble. The purple skirt fluttered in the wind, and every frown and movement outlined a perfect arc, which was intoxicating. Every time the snow-white jade feet fell, it was like stepping on a crystal stone platform, crystal clear, beautiful and flawless. There was a holy breath all over her body. That face was even more dazzling, pure and refined. Hiss. Gurgle. There was a sound of inhalation around, and many male monks couldn't help swallowing their saliva, breathing rapidly, and their heartbeats accelerated. Who wouldn't love such a stunning beauty? It's a pity that such a beauty will never have anything to do with them. They can see her from a distance at this time, which is already a great honor for their ancestors. Hiss. So beautiful. This is Fairy Yuetian, so beautiful, really like a goddess, beautiful beyond the mundane world. I once had the honor of meeting a saint from a certain sect, but she is still far inferior to Fairy Yuetian in front of me. Such a person can only be possessed by a super genius like Fen Yunhao, right? If I can spend a night with such a woman, I would be willing to shorten my life for 1,000 years. You are dreaming, a person like you is still trying to eat swan meat? Are you worthy? Yes, such a thing can only be dreamed of, and I dare not hope for it at all. You know, the other party's fiancé is Fen Yunhao. Everyone whispered, their hearts were swaying, and their eyes were fixed on the figure of Fairy Yuetian without blinking. Fen Yunhao looked straight ahead, his expression was extremely calm, but he was already feeling elated in his heart. The fairy that everyone could only dream of was his future fiancé. This feeling was great. But even if he was secretly happy, he was naturally very dissatisfied when he heard others talking about his future Taoist partner so wantonly. He snorted coldly, and suddenly a terrifying pressure spread, causing the faces of the monks around to change drastically, and they dared not speak nonsense anymore. However, everyone soon thought of another fairy and began to discuss it. It's a pity that Shen Yaoxi, the saint of Yaoguang Holy Land, is still imprisoned in the Great Qin dynasty, otherwise we might be able to see her this time. A monk sighed with regret. Alas, speaking of fairy Yaoxi, she has become a prisoner of the Great Qin. I really don't know what kind of torture she has suffered during this period. It is said that she has lost all contact since she was captured in the Great Qin Palace. No one knows whether she died or escaped. In my opinion, the Great Qin Emperor is incompetent and lustful. Fairy Yaoxi will definitely not escape the fate of being defiled. Yes, damn the Great Qin dynasty, damn the tyrant Qin Mu, he deserves death. We must send troops to avenge Fairy Yaoxi. And our sect's eldest sister was also captured by the tyrant Qin Mu. Another cultivator also sighed, his tone filled with deep grief and indignation. And our sect's junior sister was also captured. The Great Qin dynasty is too bullying. When we invade Tianlan territory, it will be the day when the Great Qin dynasty will perish. That's right. The Great Qin must be destroyed. Many cultivators cursed, threatening to kill all the people in the Great Qin dynasty and slaughter hundreds of millions of people. There was a flash of anger in their eyes, and they felt sorry for Fairy Yaoxi's experience. When they thought of the fairy from their Tiankai domain being wantonly defiled by the Emperor of Qin, they were filled with hatred. For this matter, the entire Qin royal family must be slaughtered in blood to relieve their hatred. Fairy Yaoxi. Fairy Yueshan couldn't help but clench her pink fists, bit her red lips with her pearly teeth, and her face was full of pain. The other party was on the same fairy list of Tiankai domain as her, and they had a very good personal relationship. She was naturally heartbroken when the other party experienced such a tragic experience. Although Fen Yunhao didn't speak, his expression was obviously much gloomier. This is the fairy from their Tiankai domain. Even if he can't get it, it won't be the turn of the Qin Emperor. Fen Yunhao was extremely jealous and wanted to kill Qin right now. He turned to look at Fairy Yueshan, a touch of tenderness flashed in his eyes, and he whispered softly, I will definitely help you rescue Fairy Yaoxi. Okay. Fairy Yueshan's face returned to calm, she smiled lightly, and there was warmth in her beautiful eyes. After we set off later, remember not to leave my sight, otherwise I won't be able to protect you. Fen Yunhao smiled slightly and said again. Yeah, Fairy Yueshan nodded gently, her beautiful face flushed, and she was so beautiful that she was beyond description. Then, the two walked side by side into the tallest building of Tianlang City, ready to meet up with the leaders of other holy sects to discuss the plan. At this time, boom! Suddenly, a loud bang exploded, the sky and the earth changed color, and the violent energy swept in all directions, blowing the yellow sand in the sky. A dazzling silver sword light rushed up to the sky, penetrating the sky and the earth. It was a silver-white long sword, emitting a shocking sword intent, which made people's eyes shed tears and hurt. At the end of the sword light, 3 men and 1 woman stood there. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 269. The sword light that was as bright as the Milky Way hanging upside down was swayed by them. They saw the silver-white sword emerging from their hands, hanging in mid-air, the blade was sharp and the cold light shone. Suddenly, the silver-white sword trembled violently, and burst out with wisps of bright sword light, illuminating the surrounding areas with a powerful force. Buzz! The sound of sword clanging became louder and louder, as if coming from the sky. It was deafening. The sword light became more and more dazzling, making people unable to open their eyes. Everyone was shocked. Before they could react, they felt roots growing on the soles of their feet, and they couldn't move an inch. The terrifying sword intent made their souls tremble, as if they were about to burst. Before the sword even arrived, it was already overwhelming them. Why do we get hurt every time these big shots appear? A young man said with grief and anger, feeling miserable in his heart. Every time these big shots appeared, he would be frightened, even though they would not cause any real injuries. However, the inner damage is irreparable. What do you know? This is the strength of a big shot. If not, how can you show how awesome they are? Another person said disdainfully, but his tone was full of awe and envy. That's true. If I were so powerful, my appearance would definitely be more exaggerated than theirs. The young man nodded thoughtfully, his eyes full of longing, as if he was imagining how he would appear after becoming a peerless master. You don't even think about it in this life. Just be a passerby in the background. Someone next to him mocked. The young man curled his lips and said disdainfully, "Who are you looking down on? 30 years to the east of the river, 30 years to the west of the river, don't bully the young man into poverty." Everyone shook their heads and didn't bother to pay attention to him anymore. This young man is obviously a newbie and has no idea about the cruelty of cultivation. After 100 years, he will definitely never be able to say such words again. At this moment, the entire city was shrouded in sword light. Countless people looked up and saw the sword light piercing the sky, which was dazzling and beautiful. Finally, the sword light gradually faded, and the figures of the four people were completely revealed in front of everyone. At this moment, the heaven and earth were silent, and everything was silent. Their figures are straight, like swords and peaks, looking proudly at the sky and the earth. That kind of contemptuous, self-centered aura is shocking. They were standing there, but it felt like four towering mountains reaching into the clouds, unfathomable and insurmountable. I saw that the appearance, height, and body shape of the three men were exactly the same. Not only that, he also wore the same gray robe, held the same silver-white sword, and had the same logo embroidered on the chest. From a distance, it looks like one person has split into two clones, and they can't tell each other apart at all. They carried ancient swords on their backs, their clothes made a rustling sound, their long hair danced in the air, their faces were cold, and they exuded a sharp and domineering sword aura. It was like a peerless magic weapon being unsheathed, unparalleled in strength and shuddering. The woman also wore a gray robe to cover her body, completely covering up her graceful and exquisite curves. She has flowing black hair, exquisite and perfect facial features, a slender waist, and snow-white legs. But the most eye-catching thing is her eyes, which are as black as ink, as if night has fallen, and are soul-stirring. Those pair of eyes were deep and cold, like a cold pool, which was intimidating. Hiss. Looking at the woman, everyone gasped, with a hint of shock in their eyes. Especially when he saw her eyes, his heart tingled fiercely and his soul palpitated, as if he had been seen through by the other person in his past and present lives. The four of them stood in the void, like heavenly beings, overlooking the vast land, with majestic momentum and shocking people's hearts. Especially the woman in gray robe. When she glanced across the entire audience, everyone couldn't help but shiver, their hearts beat violently, and their breathing became rapid. These four are. It's the sword master of Duckweed Sword Sect. Someone recognized the logo on their clothes and immediately shouted. It turns out it's them. No wonder they have such sword power, it's really terrifying. Yes. Those three master swordsmen should be the three swordsmen of Duckweed Sword Section. Yes, it is said that the three of them are extremely talented in swordsmanship, their bodies are comparable to treasures, and their combat power is extremely amazing. They are the most famous sword masters of Duckweed Sword Section. Not only that, they are also connected with each other, and the combined sword formation they used is truly terrifying. They once killed 4 monsters in the Saint Realm, establishing the status of sword masters in one fell swoop, and becoming famous in Tiankai. Everyone was talking about it, and they all looked at the 4 sword masters in the void with awe and even fear, not daring to look directly at them. But who is that woman? She is actually qualified to be equal to the 3 sword masters of Duckweed Sword Sect, and even seems to be superior to them. Someone asked doubtfully. She is the ancestor of the Duckweed Sword Section. She is higher in seniority than the master of the Duckweed Sword Section. She is known as the Sword Fairy and is very powerful. It is said that she once fought against the 3 sword masters of the Duckweed Sword Sect, won against 3, and finally win. Someone replied. Hearing this, the surrounding crowd suddenly became agitated. It's actually her? I heard that she is the reincarnation of an immortal in the sky. There are also rumors that she was born with a pair of special eyes that can see the origin of everything. Not only can she see the flaws of the skills, but she can also see through the enemy's flaws at a glance, so she only needs one sword to defeat the enemy. That's right. She has practiced the Duckweed sword art for less than 100 years, and she can fight with the strongest sword master of the Duckweed sword sect without losing. It is worthy of being the first sect of the Apocalypse domain, the Duckweed sword section. It is really a place with hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Everyone said excitedly, with admiration and yearning in their eyes. At this time, everyone's eyes were focused on the woman, and their eyes became hot, filled with the heat of fire. However, no one dared to approach. Because her momentum was too terrible, it made people tremble from the bone marrow. That kind of power was more fierce and powerful than the sword intent of any sword cultivator. In front of her, everyone was as small and humble as an ant. Xuanhuan looked at the people who were discussing. Her cold and snowy face was calm, indifferent, as if nothing in the world could arouse her interest. Then, she took a step forward, the sky shook, the space twisted, and she disappeared from everyone's sight in an instant. Everyone withdrew their gazes with a sense of satisfaction, and couldn't help but sigh with emotion. I didn't expect that even the sword fairy who had not appeared for a long time would appear. Today is really an eye-opener. I'm lucky. Yes, today I not only saw the fairy Yuetian, but also saw the style of the sword fairy with my own eyes. I have no regrets in this life. Hee, when the war starts, we will follow the sword fairy. By then, we will definitely learn a lot of things, which will be of great help to improve our swordsmanship. Haha, you are still smart. At this time, everyone had an eager expression, their eyes were shining, and they were full of expectations. Swish. However, at this moment, a terrifying force suddenly came from the sky, slashing down with a destructive breath. The young man who was shouting 30 years of Hedong had a sad face and said angrily, "Again? Is this going to end? At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid." Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 270. Hiss, what is that? All the monks looked up, their pupils suddenly shrank. The sky in the distance was dyed blood red, and a huge ship was slowly approaching the ancient city. The huge hull occupied the position at the end of the field of vision. Everyone frowned. What is this? Looking at this strange giant ship that suddenly appeared, everyone's heart palpitated and felt a great oppression. They had never seen such a strange thing, like a dragon but not a dragon, like a snake but not a snake, like a turtle but not a turtle, like a fish but not a fish. It was dark gold all over, with dense runes carved on it, and it looked weird and unpredictable. On the bow, a bright plaque was hung. It read, Xianming Palace. That is that Xianming Palace. Everyone was shocked. Xianming Palace is an extremely mysterious force in the Tiankai domain. They do not have a fixed sect address, but use a flying boat as a section. Their whereabouts are vague and difficult to find. They did not join any forces, but no one dared to provoke them because their strength was unfathomable. Their hall master was even more mysterious, and no one knew how strong he was. It was said that he would appear every 10 years to recruit disciples. And only those monks with outstanding talents were accepted, and they were strictly screened. Only those monks at the level of Tianjiao were qualified to join. I didn't expect them to show up. It seems that there will be a good show this time. The crowd whispered, their eyes flashing with deep excitement. The speed of the entire flying boat suddenly increased, turning into a blood rainbow that broke through the sky and arrived above Tianlang City in the blink of an eye. Voila la! Then, hundreds of streamers flew out of the Xianming Hall, all wearing uniform clothes, and surrounded by strange black mist. Everyone's breath was extremely terrifying, making people tremble in their souls and dare not approach at all. Those streamers came to the sky above the city wall, and then landed on the tower, revealing their figures. The leader was an old man in a black robe. The old man had a youthful face with flowing hair and beard, and his eyes were as sharp as a blade. He exuded a fierce and violent aura that was suffocating, like a demon god descending. Next to him was a girl in a black dress, with beautiful features, willow eyebrows, and a beautiful nose, and snow-white and crystal skin, as if it were white jade, flawless. A pair of smart eyes seemed to be able to seduce souls and make people irresistible. Strands of dark and strange black mist entangled around her, making her look extremely evil and charming. Especially the arc at the corner of her mouth that seemed to be there and not there, giving people a sense of evil temptation, as if she was a black lotus in full bloom, exuding a dangerous aura. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The crowd flew into the city lord's hall and disappeared from everyone's sight in the blink of an eye without stopping at all. Is this the legendary Xianming Palace? It's really mysterious and weird. Why do I feel that they are a bit weird? Yeah, I always feel that something is weird, but I can't put my finger on it. Looking at the people from Xianming Palace who left, everyone talked about it. But soon, they stopped paying attention to this matter. Xianming Palace was always secretive, so it was normal for them to have this feeling. Buzz. At this time, the void in the distance suddenly shook, and the space rippled. Someone drove a flying boat and locked the city lord's mansion. Everyone looked up and saw a silver-white flying boat whistling from a distance. The wheels crushed the space, and the sound was sharp and piercing. A row of guards holding black spears stood on the flying boat, killing, and the cold breath of death spread. Before everyone had time to see clearly. Soon, the void trembled slightly, and another huge chariot slowly appeared outside Tianlang City. It was 10,000 feet long, black in color, and engraved with dense array patterns. Thick chains were wrapped around it, emitting a monstrous murderous aura, like a demon weapon. This is... The crowd gasped and was stunned. Two huge monsters spanned 10,000 meters, covering a large area of the sky, emitting a cold and murderous aura that was heart-pounding. But this was not over yet. Immediately afterwards, the surrounding void shook violently, and huge monsters continued to appear. Rumble. The sky shook, and an ancient and vicissitudes of bronze chariot appeared. The bronze chariot was made of bronze, simple and heavy, exuding traces of years and a vast atmosphere. Cry. Accompanied by a loud phoenix cry, a giant bird circled in, with dazzling flames blooming all over its body, overwhelming the world. The blazing heat swept across the world, as if it was going to burn the heaven and earth to ashes, making everyone change color and unable to help but retreat. At the same time, a giant tripod emerged, spewing out monstrous purple flames, and crashed with the power to suppress the heavens, and the void collapsed and annihilated. Boom! A war halberd broke through the sky and fell down, bursting out with energy fluctuations that destroyed the world, like a falling meteorite, shaking the void to pieces. In a short moment, one by one, the powerful forces of the Holy Land and the Apocalypse domain came and appeared in front of Tianlang City. They either rode on various treasure chariots, or rode on birds and beasts, or controlled powerful magic weapons. Each of them was extremely powerful and noble. Their strength was not weaker than the forces that appeared earlier, such as Fenglay Pavilion, Fuping Sword Sect, and Xianming Palace. Their appearance immediately caused an uproar, and Tianlang City was boiling. Everyone looked at those forces with excitement and anticipation, wishing they could immediately start attacking Tianlan territory and occupy Great Qin. It's so lively, so many powerful people are here, the crowd was shocked. The end of the Qin dynasty is finally coming, a man gloated. Now look at how arrogant the Hanjun of Great Qin is, a warrior said viciously, staring in the direction of Great Qin with a face filled with resentment. All the forces in the Apocalypse region gathered together, not for a small fight, but for the Great Qin dynasty. Although the Qin dynasty was powerful and had a solid foundation, it would never be able to withstand the siege of so many powerful enemies, and it would definitely be defeated. Everyone cheered in unison, feeling their blood boiling. The young man who shouted out 30 years of Hedong was even more excited. He clenched his fists and wanted to look up to the sky and roar to vent his excitement. When I catch that damn Hanjun of Great Qin, I must use his head as a chamber pot. The young man shouted loudly, his eyes filled with hatred when he thought of the torture that his sect's eldest sister endured after being captured by the Great Qin Hanjun. Fellow Taoist, what did Great Qin Hanjun do that makes you hate him so much? At this moment, a magnetic voice with a curious tone suddenly sounded behind the young man. When the young man heard this, he was startled. He turned around quickly and found a young man in black standing behind him. He was relieved. But he was still frightened into a cold sweat and asked in a low voice, "Who are you?" The young man in black grinned, showing his white teeth, and said with a bright smile, "My name is Mu Cheng. I was passing by here and it was very satisfying to hear what you scolded just now. I want to ask out of curiosity. Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding."